tell you what, there's stuff going on. A lot of it's more of the same, but there's some other stuff happening. You can only take so many electrons around your globe before it does things. These balls coming through here that are expanding and spinning, they come through our magnetosphere, are electron jets, and they're spiraling. And they spiral both in the lateral plane and in the vertical plane because sometimes they're interacting with a second source of particles. But when you see the nice expansions, there's very few positively charged particles in those simulations. The nice fanning out happens when there's no second particles, just electrons. Now, what happens is these particles are coming in and being funneled towards the back of the tail stream, some of these electrons. And what's also happening is they're trying to curl around and come back to their pole. And when they do that, they hit each other and they make these dimples. And the most obvious dimple that you would see would be on another magnetosphere, which I'll show you. But the dimple would be 9 o'clock position where Earth is. And particles come around and they meet right there. Some make it through and get pulled in through the poles. Some, they're too close and not fast enough and they get repelled, almost like Earth is shooting a shotgun. These bizarre pulses are weird. And the sun is doing the same thing. The sun is having these same pulses. Some of the pulses that you do see coming through here are of plasma. And there's a few protons, but not very many. And the expansion looks like somebody spraying a fire hose. And these are like jets. And the thing that's even more bizarre is in front of the Earth, you're not seeing a huge density spike to create this ball, you know. So what's happening is you're having them funneled and then shot out in the tail stream. That's amazing. And like a shotgun, you'll have magnetic field lines, those blue vertical lines. Those blue vertical lines are supposed to always be going from right to left because they're created by electrons from the solar wind. But they're coming at your right shoulder. And it's pretty bizarre. Now, Earth has a focusing cone. When the helium, neutral helium comes in, it gets focused. And the same thing happens with electrons. You can create a focusing cone. The problem is that they repel each other. And so it's hard to concentrate electrons into too tight of an area. So these electrons are flying off everywhere. There's so many of them, and they're interacting with the sun's wind that our background X-ray flux has climbed tenfold. The red line is at 10 to the minus 8 when it usually hovers around 10 to the minus 9. Notice it's been a gradual, steady increase, like something's getting closer and closer, and some particles get more dense, or is it denser? And then the particle interactions between the sun's wind and this brown dwarf's wind creates more X-ray. In fact, they've proven that's the cause of the X-ray background that astronomers see in the sky. The whole sky is aglow with background radiation, and you can only see it with a special telescope that sees in X-rays. And they attribute it to electron exchange from the helium. And The helium has all its electrons, so there's lots of electrons around. And the protons get scarfed up by the helium-3 to form more helium-4. Then those electrons that are associated with the proton, those are now like more in abundance. So your overall counts, your ratios are way off, and we have a lot of electrons in the solar system. And when the Earth has a focusing cone, especially a gravitational focusing cone, but so does the sun. And the sun did not always look like this on Milso, Mauna Loa Observatory. We didn't have that kind of corona. So, you know, if the governments would just realize it was the sun that was killing the Earth, that shade is what is needed, we'd stop building pipelines, and we'd stop building border walls, and take that money, that manpower, and start covering and shading our fauna. Don't you think Revelations hasn't happened before? Don't think, if it hasn't happened before, that it can never happen again. Very specific things. Fire from the sky. Here's a dimple, a 9 o'clock position. You see where the electrons from underneath and electrons going over the top try to curl back around. And they get captured by our magnetic field. They get funneled in and creating like a little particle collider right there. So if that's happening on our planet, it's got to be happening on other planets. They got to be capturing these magnetic electrons. And this glow, it just seems to get more and more, guys. It's really something you have to deal with. You have to drink chlorophyll. You have to put it in water and drink it. It forces you to drink your water too. If you just take chlorophyll, I get a small bottle with dropper because it's more concentrated and less messy. But the big bottles are fine. So when real particles come through, like helium and hydrogen and protons and helium isotopes, they wash away the electrons and compress the magnetosphere. So when stuff's going through your tailstream that isn't compressing your magnetosphere, those are electrons. Where in the heck are all these electrons coming from? Well, we got two sources, and we've identified that the protons are being absorbed by helium-3 and that there's extra electrons based upon that alone in a ratio kind of a sense. So when you're measuring, you're saying, wow, there's no protons, but we got plenty of electrons. But brown dwarfs, make no mistake about it, are also electron factories due to their high rate of spin and their high magnetism. They also produce X-rays because of their high spin and because of their electrons. So when you see the Earth magnetosphere aglow and you see a tenfold increase in background radiation, you know there's electrons at work here. And don't think that the same phenomenon doesn't happen in the sun. The difference is when the electrons wash through the sun, they become hotter. The other thing is that the sun can create electrons by ionizing the helium. So you've been ionizing hydrogen to form protons and electrons your whole life as a sun. Now you're sucking in and you're drawing in neutral helium. So neutral helium has all its electrons. So now there are more electrons for the sun to be ionizing away from particles. More particles, more electrons. So the sun itself has more electrons in its corona and in its magnetic fields. And when you compare the two MeV flux, you see it used to be pretty huge during solar maximum, and now it's more compressed. And it makes you wonder if we have a higher density of radiation coming in from a closer source. You could have shaded these bats. You really could have. It wouldn't have been any major feat. You could shoot rope over the tree and pull the tarp over, or you can use cherry pickers. I mean, come on. If you knew the sun was killing the earth, you would be able to do something about it. I do not believe that all the sun's magnetic fields all of a sudden are pointed our direction. I do not think that at all. But I do think the sun is jetting electrons. I do. So yeah, I think we're seeing all the symptoms of a brown dwarf getting closer. We're looking for magnitude 8 earthquakes, if there's one in Leo, to happen any day. We told you that Venus would swing back in between Earth and Jupiter. We told you that, and we told you it would be geo-effective. We did. We told you it would be, some 7-pointers could pop up, and we're getting 6 7s right now. So we'll see. We'll see. We may not get 7-pointers, but if you get an 8-pointer, there's something magnetic out there to the